Okay, Visa asked for a video about the school boat concept, also known as dream mashups. I have a blog post on this now. He's got a video on it, but I thought I would lay out some stuff. I think in particular, because it was Visa asking, I'll point at something that he felt was sort of underemphasized by the blog post. I was emphasizing it in the blog post because it felt important to not in a failure mode. Anyway, but I need to introduce the concept first. So the basic idea is this tweet I have that goes something like, everyone is constantly living in a mashup of old emotional realities with whatever's actually going on in their external world at any given time. And as in dreams, people don't realize the bizarreness of these mashups while they're asleep or while they're in them. You know, it's like dreaming that you're at school, but also it's on a boat. And at the time, that seems reasonable. And then you wake up and you're like, that was really bizarre. So the idea is that emotional flashbacks, which are flashbacks that include some flashbacks that are mostly about your emotional state, rather than being about rather than having like visual imagery to them, are extremely common. And what I would say is that in some meaningful sense, all of perception is actually composed of this. Like it's not an edge case. The question is basically just how much does what you're projecting onto reality actually match what it is that you're projecting onto, versus to what extent is it irrelevant. And then there's a question of to what extent is, if you have an emotional flashback to a situation where you felt really unsafe, well, then you're going to feel really unsafe in the present, and that's not going to be very functional. But in some sense, your capacity to make sense of everything that you are experiencing is composed out of being able to map it onto things you've already experienced on some level. Now, there might be something new, but you're still perceiving it in terms of what you've already perceived and made sense of. So, so that's the basic dream mashups concept. One thing that Visa really liked was the thing where it's like everybody is constantly walking around like that. Like, it's not a kind of, sometimes this happens. It's like, no, this is by default what is going on. We are constantly doing this every time. The book by Lakoff, Metaphors We Live By, it's like every time we're in any kind of conversation, we are projecting the meaning of what type of conversation it is onto the conversation. Anytime we're going to bed, it's associated with all of the other times we've gone to bed, particularly the times we've gone to bed in the type of mood or the type of bed or whatever that we're in at the moment. We project those moments onto our present moment. And this is how sense-making works, essentially. This is, as I said, not an edge case, not an aberrant case. There's actually something called naturalistic decision-making, it's got another letter in it, but it's a model for how people make decisions, and there's like recognition prime decision making, and it points at how a lot of professional expert decision making is made via a similar process where somebody encounters a situation, a firefighter or a surgeon or whatever, encounters a situation and is immediately struck by, parallels to other situations as well as differences, and uses that to detect what's going on, to get a sense of things. That people in practice mostly don't make decisions by considering multiple options. They consider one option and they kind of go, does this fit enough? And if it fits enough, then they say, this is probably it, let's roll with it. And if it doesn't, then they reject it and they find a next best option. And this has been shown to be at least how expert decisions are made in a lot of cases. So this is the same thing as the school boat phenomenon. It's just that, an expert is going to have really precisely honed intuitions such that what they're projecting onto the situation is actually very accurate, as opposed to being this bizarre mashup. Now, and that's within the field of their expertise, of course. When they go home and have an argument with their spouse, they may be encountering exactly the same sorts of things that anybody else is. So what can we do about this? One of the most useful phrases that I've found for this comes from the Coherence Therapy folks, which is part of the inspiration for this concept, to be clear. I came up with the frame of the school boat, but I didn't, ultimately the idea is not actually that original. And Pete Walker is the source of the phrase emotional flashbacks, I believe. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, the coherence therapy folks have this really beautiful phrase, the construed meaning of the situation. And I found that so powerful. It's like if I'm in a kind of an argument with somebody close to me, or if I'm in some situation that feels unsafe, there's something I can ask myself, which I don't quite know the right words for it, but it's like I ask myself something like what do I think is going on here? What feels at stake? What feels like, yeah, how would I put it? Sort of, yeah, like what's this all about for me? And again, it's not so much about the words, but it's about a kind of stance that says this situation is meaning something to me that maybe not at all obvious. It may be something like, oh, if you don't want to hang out with me right now, that means that, you know, I'm being rejected on some deep personal level and I'm going to be alone and I'm going to be powerless to do anything about that or something like that. So there's this whole meaning that's getting laid onto the thing where maybe the person is just tired and it doesn't sort of, on their end, it doesn't have anything to do with me, but I'm still like, oh no, there's this meaning. And I'm dealing with this meaning. And if I'm not able to kind of notice and acknowledge that, then I'm going to be forcing them to deal with my meaning as well. And probably in a really implicit way that's going to be really confusing because they're going to be like, I didn't sign up for giving you a rejection in this moment. I just really want to go to bed. I don't understand why you have to feel rejected, because from their perspective, you don't. Like they're not projecting that meaning onto the situation. They're just, you know, having whatever experience of it they're having. Although sometimes people can get all up in each other's business, and if you have a recurring thing like this, then the person starts to feel like, oh, maybe I am being rejecty or something. They start to get into your story about what's going on implicitly. So yeah, that's the gist of the school boat concept in video form, and some thoughts about how it's natural and what you can do about it.